2. Look at that, this thing is so quick. Hey, what's up guys? Everything Apple Pro here. Here's a random one. Let's revisit the iPhone SE in 2019. So Apple recently has been having these promotions where they've posted the iPhone SE for $250 refurbished, and this is basically a brand new iPhone SE. It's the iPhone 6s internals in the body of an iPhone 5s, one of the most iconic Apple designs ever, and now they're selling it at a bargain price. Well, I'm here to tell you, you can get it even lower. You can get this phone as cheap as $100 today and make it the most pimped out, the coolest phone to have in your pocket for a minimalist, basically. Minimalists will love this phone. So it's not available on Apple's website anymore, and that's the sad part. I was able to pick one up for $250. That's what we're gonna be taking a look at today. But I wanna show you that the iPhone SE still holds up in 2019, and where you guys can get one for cheaper, basically why you should take a look at this phone this year and how it's still relevant. It's super cool. The fact that this is running the latest firmware and has the smallest display, the smallest form factor out of pretty much any phone is amazing, and it's so cheap. So Apple doesn't have them for $250. On eBay, I was literally able to find a handful under $100. Here's one unlocked, rose gold, $85 plus, so $92, basically $85. Some of them are locked, but most you can get for $130 below. There is a sea of iPhone SEs for $100, $130 to $100. So there is basically no shortage of these. Let's take a look at it in 2019. So this was a device that's rumored to get axed for iOS 13, that it might not get that update. And I was very sad to see that, because this device is more than capable of running it. So it has 2 gigabytes of RAM, and that's amazing. So like, you're getting so much. You have 2 gigabytes of RAM, 1.85 dual core processor. It's extremely capable. The specs are certainly there. The display is where it's lacking mostly. The display is still the old 4.0 inch display. It still has the 326 pixel density of a Retina display. It's definitely not very bright. The colors aren't very good. It does not have the P3 color gamut of newer iPhones, but it's still a phone that you can't help but appreciate. You can't help but love. So here's a $250 one, which is honestly kind of spendy. A lot of people think that's a good deal, but it's spendy even what Apple gives you it for. Like, you can get it for way less. It does come pretty much brand new, and what a just timeless, beautiful design. I'm so glad that Apple is still somewhat selling these. Let's turn it on and see what they ship it with nowadays. But I want to show you the ultimate iPhone SE, and I've already set this up. Like, if you guys can score one of these, just for the nostalgia factor alone, I think it's worth taking a look at one of these phones, just to have in your pocket, maybe use it for music, keep it as a dedicated machine in the car or something. But I set this up on the iOS 12 jailbreak. Right now, you can still downgrade to iOS 12.1.1 Beta 3 and still jailbreak, which is what I did, or using the jailbreak process. If you guys want to do that, link it down below. But I was able to install Cydia and then get the iPhone 10 home gestures on this guy. So basically, you have the entire iPhone 10 interface. I've sped up the animations. So this phone literally feels just as fast as an iPhone 10s. No joke. I will literally compare it in a couple scenes here. But this thing is ridiculously fast. You have all the iPhone 10 animations. From the lock screen, you have the iPhone 10 toggles, like a fake 3D touch type deal. It's kind of cool. So you hold it, basically haptic touch from the 10R. Very neat all around. You swipe up, you basically don't need your home button anymore. So that's a very, very cool one. And this plus color flow on the lock screen makes this the perfect jailbroken phone. So look at how that reacts to the colors, the album art, one of my favorite jailbreak tweaks. And it looks so cute and personal and bubbly here on the iPhone SE. That's the jailbreak scene, but let's take a look at the stock scene, kind of just how it stacks up to one of the modern phones. And I think I'll compare this to the iPhone 10R, because that's really the phone this is most similar to all these years later. So of course we have Touch ID on this system, which I set up. This is the first generation, so you're not getting the newer Touch ID. Unfortunately, it's still kind of slow. But, you know, it's still nice. It's nice not to have Face ID. This is a completely alternative phone, and it's just on a completely different spectrum, but somehow Apple still supports it today. Honestly, I would be so sad if this didn't get iOS 13. I want to see them keep that minimal, small form factor. This certainly has the power for it. So let's see what firmware they shipped it to us on. I got it with iOS 11.4.1. So if I wanted to, I could have kept it on this firmware and jailbreak it on 11.4.1, but I think I'm gonna update it and get it on iOS 12, because this is seriously where it's at. The ability to get all these cool tweaks, just turn this phone into a supercomputer. All right, so I wanna give you a rough idea of the power. So I'm gonna run a Geekbench real quick on the 10R and this one, and see the difference between, let's say, $150 for this phone versus a $750 phone. Will the $600 difference be worth upgrading to the 10R for? I mean, obviously I'm joking. You're paying for so much here. A larger display, the notch. You're getting the camera, much better camera on this one, a better True Tone flash on the back, stereo speakers. You don't have the best speaker quality on this either. It's still cute. You're willing to live with it with all of the compromises just because the phone is so amazing. Just look at this thing. The design is flawless, truly. Oh, and of course the headphone jack. I mean, that's always a bonus. So very nice all around. This is from an old project. This is one of the last iPhones that Apple made with a removable Apple logo in the back. So we were able to put acrylic there, give it this nice glowing Apple logo. It seriously looks awesome. Gives it that distinct look. And this doesn't cost much at all to do. I'll link where you can do this down below in the description if you want to find out about it. But it's a must on my list for the perfect iPhone SE setup in 2019. So check that out. The speed of this thing still checks out 100%. In fact, the single core score is just as fast as my Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus in 2019. In fact, even faster. Multi-score is basically half of that of the S10 Plus. You're getting half the performance for basically $100, $150 max. That is amazing. Just to give you some perspective, just navigating the user interface, it's definitely very fast, even in 2019. The jailbreak certainly helps, of course, but let me just show you side by side with everything cleared out here. I'm gonna launch the same thing on both. I'm gonna launch settings here, 1, 2. So just a little bit behind, really not much of a difference. Camera at 1, 2. Ooh, even faster on the iPhone SE. Isn't that kind of funny? Music, 1, 2. Just a little bit behind, but not very long at all, really. Let's try Geekbench, 1, 2. So literally, you can see how close this is. Even as a standalone device, you can still run basically all of the apps that are available for newer and larger devices in iOS 12. The support is certainly there and will be for quite some time. So you're not limiting yourself on that at all. So something I wanted to mention is that this design is very reminiscent, or more like this design is very reminiscent of this one. They're very, very similar. Now this one doesn't have the beveling on the edges that the iPhone SE has, but it's a very similar design. In fact, they're almost the same thickness too. Different shades of space gray certainly, but a very similar design. And I would love to see Apple revisit this. I would love to see the iPhone 11 have this design, which is kind of what we're rendering in all of our scenes. It's such a sexy look. I mean, I would love to see the iPhone go back to it. In my opinion, this is peak Apple design right here. Just a blast to the past, basically a time capsule, but in a modern setting, supported by modern firmwares and modern jailbreaks. How much better does it get? All right, so check this out. You guys will not believe it, but the biometrics are faster with Touch ID, the first generation, versus Face ID. Here we go, 1, 2, 3. So by the time the animations happen, it locates your face and unlocks. The iPhone SE is already in the phone, ready to use. So let's try that once again. 1, 2. Look at that, this thing is so quick. So it's kind of amazing that the biometrics on this can still be faster than a modern smartphone. You know, in a way, you're losing a lot that you get with more modern phones, of course, the size, but at the same time, you're gaining a lot in simplicity. Less is more, and that's definitely what the iPhone SE is all about. Also, something I'd like to bring up is that there's no 3D touch. I personally don't see this as being a bad thing at all because the iPhone XR doesn't have it either. With jailbreak tweaks, you can bring the functionality of haptic touch to this iPhone, so you're not missing out on anything. You have everything you could possibly want in this phone already. So just so you know, this still has a dual-core processor, 1.85 gigahertz, 2 gigabytes of RAM. That's the most important part. This only has 1 gigabyte less than the most expensive and modern smartphones, and it's kind of amazing that Apple stuck it all into here. Again, that the price is so low for what you're getting. It still handles Asphalt 9 pretty wonderfully. You know, effects were pretty good still. It's obviously not as grandiose as on a larger display, but it held up, certainly. It's the speakers that you start to notice are definitely lacking. For the heck of it, let's just measure it. Wow. Still, look, punches above its weight, definitely. So only a couple other things that it's missing. This obviously doesn't have wireless charging, and in a modern world, definitely 2019, that's something you want to have. With Amazon, you can of course add accessories. There are cases for it. The support is certainly there if you wanted to get that feature. That's a non-issue. Here's my beef with this phone. This 1.3 megapixel shooter up here is pretty terrible. So let's take a selfie real quick just to give you an idea. So I'm gonna look at this one. And then this one. So the skin tones look way different, and also that has something to do with the display quality itself. It's just very bad, especially with dynamic range on the front. Resolution, definitely not the same. So the iPhone SE supports 4K video. It has a 12 megapixel shooter from the iPhone 6s, and it's very capable. You're not missing out on much from the iPhone XR. It is really cold, but I'm trying to give you a visual here. So we're gonna record the same scene here. We're gonna go down to the highway. You can see the dynamic range certainly is not as good, so it's very hard for it to capture both the highway and the sky, but the XR handles it fairly well. And that's where I think the biggest difference between these cameras lies. Otherwise, the quality is there, the sharpness is there, no optical image stabilization, that's pretty apparent. But otherwise, it looks very good. All right, guys, so I just want to wrap this up by saying you should definitely give this phone a try if you haven't. Just the low price factor right now, it's a perfect time to get in and explore the old nostalgia, but at the same time, a modern take on it, on a device that's still supported. And with the latest jailbreak, that's just gonna be a lot of fun. You can literally buy this phone just to experiment, because if you're not familiar with jailbreaking, if you're not familiar with modding your phone, this is a great place to start. It has a great foundation already. I hope you guys enjoyed this modern take on the iPhone SE. It certainly holds up in 2019. It has the power, it has the software support. I believe it has a few good years left, and hopefully iOS 13 does support this phone, because it would be really sad to see it dropped. The iPhone SE is an awesome phone in 2019, and I certainly would recommend it. All right, guys, peace.